Siân, welcome back to Political by Design. It's good to have you on again.
It's lovely to be back.
Absolutely. And I can't wait to dive into our conversation today, because this time around, last time we talked about the Greens and how well they are doing right now in this very moment. Today, we're talking all about pride, and pride in the context of LGBTQ plus communities and lives. And I'd like to start by asking you a question about, you represent one of the, I think, most proudly LGBTQ plus cities in the country. I think that's fair to say.
Very, very proud to represent
very
proud in that respect.
And, you know, probably a bit biased, is the best city in the UK as well. But putting this aside, how much of your own identity influences your politics, your policy?
I mean, all the way through my politics, right from the start, if I'm honest, being an ally, because I'm basically straight, but being an ally, being someone who's really listening and bringing people's voices into policy making has been really, really important. And that's intersectional for me. It's always been about race and different cultural groups, as well as the LGBT plus community. But obviously, a lot of the battles that have needed to be fought have been in this space. So when it comes to the work I used to do in London, the work I used to do in Camden, standing up for lots of different issues around LGBT rights, but also things like the spaces we need in the community, the voice that people have, has been a lot of the issues that I've fought on. So I've grown stronger and more confident in how I talk about that over the years, and I've worked with some amazing campaigners, and it just feels like a very, very important part of politics at the moment, representative of other battles that we're fighting, but also one that's very, very important to win in its own right.
You already mentioned battles, and I think this is a good
I don't like
keyword.
using fighting words, but I will in this context.
It is, because if you look at the state of LGBTQ equality and LGBTQ rights in 2026, I know it's not easy, but how do you feel about it?
I feel like there are important steps backwards that have been taken by the previous government, but also by the current government, which really should know better. I do feel that as the party that we are, in the opposition, on the left, on the side of the values around equality and solidarity, we've got an important job to do. So that I take very, very seriously. And so much is being attacked about the progress that we previously made on this. And I'm not underestimating that. I think, we've seen the attacks on trans healthcare, on trans rights, the ability of people just to exist in the world is being challenged through things like the Supreme Court judgment. But also, I think there are future battles to come in terms of LGBT reproductive rights. Even things like equal marriage are going to be under attack in future. We've got something really insidious going on an international level. And I'm not exaggerating this. I've been briefed on this through the all-party parliamentary group on human rights. We've had Stonewall International, Amnesty coming in and telling us about what's going on in other parts of the world and how that can be coming here. So I'm very, very alive to what the future threats might be, as well as the current battles and what's immediately happening.
2026 marks the 10-year anniversary, unfortunately, what I describe as when everything went wrong. And up until 2016, the UK was considered one of the European leaders.
Yeah, that's what makes me so sad.
And interestingly enough, it didn't really matter what colour, what sort of colour of your rosette was. There was a common understanding, even for conservative politicians, to take it forward.
Yeah.
What happened?
That's a really, really good point. And there was a turning point. It was around then. And you did, up to that point, we were seeing even Theresa May promising to create the Gender Recognition Act, to reform that, to recognise that people should be able to self-identify, that this was a choice people could make, that they have a right to decide for themselves. She just said that it wasn't even big news when she said it. Like, we'd reached, like you say, a consensus cross-party that this was a settled question, and it felt like that. I've said before that when I came into the London Assembly, which was in 2016, on my agenda were things like blood donation ban, gender neutral options on public authorities' forms to make sure that non-binary people were included. It felt like, and complacently, it felt to me like a tidying up exercise. And then things changed. And I think it is concerted campaigning. It is by religious groups from other parts of the world gathering together momentum and resources to fund people. But also, I think, the Brexit years, the years around that referendum. I've just been talking today about how the temperature in politics is rising again, and how it starts to feel a bit like that in politics in general. But I think people just lost the feeling that they should be tolerant and inclusive, and there were people exploiting that feeling and trying to direct hate at groups that had previously we'd all decided this was all perfectly fine and part of society, and to be accepted and welcomed and celebrated. Suddenly that there were people genuinely trying to create hate again, and that felt there was something going on. It felt really suspicious.
On that suspicion, the past year really felt like a roller coaster, but not a good one.
No.
And we've seen some of the things that are now dominating the news cycle were driven by campaign groups. I remember the Supreme Court ruling, which pretty much was the result of a very, allow me that comment, nasty campaign. And unfortunately, the puberty blocker ban was made permanent. The interim guidance, which I think was an overblown press release, saying, but the interim did so much damage. And so many in our communities are now asking the question, where do we stand legally? Where do trans people stand legally in the UK in 2026?
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, that is such a good point. And you're right. The Supreme Court ruling came because the Scottish government was holding firm on equality, and they were legally challenged by a particular group. And I'm so disappointed with the Supreme Court ruling. It's very much the Supreme Court's job to bring clarity, and they were saying that they were creating clarity when actually there was so much that was woolly about the language in that judgment, conflating sex and gender and not being clear about what really was at issue, which was the rights of trans people, and the fact that the case came about from people who wanted to attack the rights of trans people. There have been other judgments in the course of this past year that have given more hope, I have to say. The where I used to represent in Highgate, we had the Women's Pond there. It's been an inclusive space since the year dot. It's been around for a very long time. And the people there were standing up for their inclusive policy and were challenged, and they succeeded in having their right to have an inclusive space upheld. So there have been some good cases as well, but overall it's worrying. And the interim guidance, which has been sitting there for so long, has created real problems. And that was that I think was its intention. You've got lots of small workplaces, lots of public institutions running spaces, and let's face it, every organisation has to have toilets.
Ideally.
Well, yes. So hopefully everywhere you go, there's a loo. And then having real uncertainty about what provision they needed to provide that was legal now.
Yeah.
And the guidance being utterly unclear about that.
Yeah.
So it just makes, it's doing what it's intended to do, which is to make people's daily lives not frictionless.
Yeah.
To create little ways in which you can feel, if you're a trans person, discriminated against around your most basic bits of life. And to me, that's horrible. It's heartbreaking, and it's gone on too long.
And the guidance, I think that's fair to say, has caused a major ripple effect. I think it's not just about trans siblings anymore, but it is also now. I mean, the question is, what is a woman, sort of in the sense of how does the Supreme Court defines it? And we already have seen issues where butch lesbians have now issues using the loo, because it's the absurdity of defining who isn't able to use the loo is quite tricky, isn't it?
Yeah. And feminists like me, we can feel the imminent threat to our rights as well, our rights to be a woman in whichever way we want to. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you have called for the guidance to be withdrawn, and saying the impact on trans lives is immense, and it hasn't been done properly. Can I ask you, what would a better guidance look like?
I mean, I would like to see guidance that said the Supreme Court judgment is as it is, in some respects in the Equality Act, but that has nothing to do with using the toilet in your daily life. Like that, for that judgment to impinge on your ability to go about your lives is too much. That this doesn't get engaged, but it's a very difficult legal question, and I'm involved in some legal cases around this as well, which I can't always talk about in detail.
Sure.
But digging right into the way that the legal guidance needs to, the guidance on what is legal now, if the Supreme Court is going to separate sex and gender in that way, and start throwing the words biological around, the difficulties that there are with all of that as well, when biological sex itself isn't even binary. You've got really to take a practical view and just say what will help people live their lives in equality, without conflict, and what genuine practical implications are there if we just keep things as they were.
And interestingly enough, I mean, the whole toilet conversation seems to be completely focused on trans women.
Exactly.
I fail to see where trans men are discussed in this.
Many people just haven't even considered that trans men exist when you dig down into the arguments. So there's a famous TV clip where Dawn Butler, I think was on Breakfast TV, worked out halfway through a conversation that the Conservative she was arguing with didn't actually know that trans men really
the clip,
existed, and just let him basically expose that for himself. And it was so marvelous at Dawn. She is a proper ally as well, and it's just the fact that people are arguing about issues they know nothing about from a position that is so bigoted. Just there should be more of a consensus growing now, I think, in society that kind of ignorance isn't acceptable.
I think the Green Party, I think that's also fair to say, the Green Party hasn't really changed its position on trans rights and is really clear around that trans rights are human rights.
Not at all. And our policies are very strong. They are the leading edge of what there was in 2016, and we've not changed that position at all.
What inspires you to hold firm? Because I can imagine that the opposition you face is also considerable, isn't it?
I represent one of the most inclusive places in the country. So as an MP, my inbox is full of love for trans people. It's full of trans people getting in touch with me. it empowers me. The people here in my constituency, the way that they write to me, the examples they offer up of the impact there has been, and the bravery with which they say, I want to add my voice, I'm prepared to speak in public. There's so much of that goes on. And I have to say, so little from the other side in this constituency. That empowers me to be a stronger voice than I would be anyway. It really does give me that responsibility to represent this area. I could not be more grateful for the constituents holding me strong on that.
Do you think there's more to be done to amplify the support, not just because I know there is loads of support in everyday life among people, because it's, I think there is some kind of almost like distorted picture in the public about how much support there is. Do you think there's more to be done to show more support in Parliament, to actually amplify the voices cross-party who are supporting? Because I think they are easily overshadowed by what's going on in the country.
I think that's right. And the media have a lot to answer for here, because actually within Parliament, whenever these issues are raised, they're voted with a strong majority. And we've got more LGBTQ plus people in Parliament now than ever before. We don't have any trans MPs, which sometimes when we're debating these issues, again, makes it more important that those people like me who represent large numbers of trans people come and make sure that their voices are represented.
Absolutely.
But I think we are a progressive Parliament on the whole, and on issues where we've been asked to vote on difficult social issues, we've tended to go in a very, very pre-2016 direction. That has been the vote.
Yeah.
So I think, we do owe it to keep debating these things in Parliament and being strong. There's a very, very good group of people across the MPs and the Lords who regularly get briefed and discuss these issues, particularly around the guidance and the Supreme Court judgment, and we're ready to act. But obviously, for a long time, we waited for the final thing to come from the government. That was put off for a long time.
Before we zoom out a little bit and broaden our horizon to talk about, a more holistic LGBTQ plus picture, I'd like to ask you about something Zach Polanski has said some time ago. And I think he argued that gender critical movements, particularly in the US, have links to fossil fuel funding. And I think he said it was designed to divide the left. What's your take on it?
I think there's definitely truth in that. I spoke before that we've been briefed on the international picture, and particularly in relation to trans rights and LGBT rights more generally, there are large, well-funded, quite often evangelical organisations who are anti-rights in general, and they are very well supported. But there's also so that's what they have in terms of the rights issue, and what they try and change in terms of policy. But also they have a political agenda. They want the right to grow because they know the right are the politicians that are going to be taking this kind of action. They want them to succeed. They also want other policy changes as well. So this is a broader coalition of, I don't know what to call it really, but the forces that want no climate action, that want inequality to not be dealt with, that don't like workers taking action, that don't like the left to grow, as well as want to work against rights. And so there is what I'll call an unholy alliance of all these different groups that know that dividing us in terms of our identity and dividing us in terms of our politics is all part of the same game.
Zooming out a little, because trans rights are clearly having a hard time at the moment politically, but there is more going on. I think it is shocking to see that the United States, for example, have rolled back massively on not just trans rights, but a broader LGBTQ rights as well. Italy is crumbling, unfortunately. I think the court has just banned same-sex adoption.
That's right. Yeah. And that's another move in terms of reproductive rights and the ability to have a family.
Yeah,
that's under attack, and we can see that coming here as well.
Hate crimes up by over 100% in the past 5 years. What is driving that?
I mean, I think it is all the things that we've talked about already. Wider campaigns, a more febrile atmosphere out in the country. The creation of hate groups is part of the growth of fascism and far right politics, and they do not care which hate groups. So they are demonising migrants and asylum seekers and the LGBT community, but also they're demonising women. They are trying to get us to hate each other for our politics. There's all that is part of the far right, the fascist programme. And I think we have to recognise that and stand up to it. And that's why intersectional solidarity is so important. It's why events like Pride are so important, because if you go out on Pride here, you watch the parade and you've got group after group after group expressing solidarity from all different parts of the political spectrum, from every different kind of workplace, and that is a real expression of solidarity, which carries over into other battles as well. It does carry over when we're trying to fight off awful policies towards migrants. The fact that we've all decided to stand together and not let them divide us over one issue means we'll do the same on other issues as well. It's so important and such a big part of the picture.
When you said it's those anti-right groups, it's not just about the LGBTQ community, but it's also about women and probably Black people as well, and asylum seekers and migrants.
Yeah.
I mean, you basically almost mentioned the entirety of society. Who is this for? Because if you run a campaign against a huge group of society, what are you trying to achieve?
It's about division, isn't it? It's about trying to make people distrust their neighbours, which atomises society, which makes you more susceptible to authoritarian ideas. It's a feeling that they want to destroy in us, this feeling of solidarity, this feeling that there is society, that we're responsible for each other. And, why this comes out of the Christian family, I don't know. I think most Christians, that's part of their philosophy too. But the evangelical right wing want that. And that's partly why they're involved in these wider campaigns.
It's almost like, completely, probably not really related to today, but the national Christian movement in the US, allow me to say, and I might be completely wrong because I'm not necessarily a religious person, but has very little to do with religion.
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen the same for the war and in Iran.
Yeah.
and Donald Trump taking it to huge extremes, portraying himself as Jesus. These are things where right-thinking Christians, the C of E type people that I don't object to at all, they themselves are saying this is not Christianity. What is this? But there's something very extreme there that's not to do with that at all. No. I should declare myself as a humanist at this point, I think, in the conversation, because I am someone who believes that we need a secular society, that we don't want religious influence. So this sort of thing raises alarm bells for me in lots of ways.
The Green Manifesto commits to a GRA reform. For those who don't know,
which was the conservative position until not so long ago. Yes,
the Gender Recognition Act 2004, I believe.
Yes.
Is it 2004? Yes. So you want it to be simpler. You want a self-declaration process. how do you make the case to people who are genuinely uncertain?
Genuinely uncertain about whether or not people should self-ID.
That's right.
I mean, I think some of the issues that have arisen around this, the Supreme Court judgment and the guidance have really thrown this into sharp relief. The Supreme Court talked about the Equality Act and the Gender Recognition Act that came around, in that period beforehand, and the Equality Act was written in the context of the Gender Recognition Act existing. Those two things, you cannot reach the conclusion the Supreme Court did if you really think about how that works. All the things about which toilet you can use, the fact that you need a certificate and you need to have gone through all kinds of onerous processes at the moment to get your gender recognised, means that there are a lot of people out there who are living in society as a gender which is not represented on their paperwork, and they haven't gone through the process. And so none of what the other side are proposing in terms of separating people can, even in their own frame of mind, actually work. We need a simpler process for getting people's gender recognised, and self-ID, a simple declaration, the way that you change your name would be absolutely sensible. And this was a cross-party position until so recently. And no government's actually got on with doing it, probably because the tabloids would raise a lot of headlines. But it is what most countries are moving towards. I think, is it Argentina that's had it for 10 years? I think there are
10 years.
I think something like that. And then other countries have been bringing it in recently, and none of the scare stories that people talk about has actually happened in those countries. And we should have been, like you say, we used to be one of the leaders on these things, and we should have been getting on with it much earlier.
Interestingly, Germany just rolled back, didn't they?
Right, yeah.
So I think it was the SPD, Green, FDP coalition who introduced self-ID, and the Conservatives now have gotten rid of it. How inspiring!
Yeah, well, it does show that progress we make
yes,
can be rolled
absolutely.
back
Yeah.
if we don't have the right governments. It is as simple as that to pass a law if you've got a majority.
And unfortunately, the question of self-ID is just one of the issues queer communities face. There is much more at stake, and much more that sort of weighs down housing, healthcare, mental health. Those are issues that really disproportionately affect queer people.
Yeah.
Why do these issues not get more political airtime?
They should, and this is something I've, through my work, I've always tried to make sure that I'm looking at the equalities aspects of different groups within an issue I'm working on. If it's housing, talking about the fact that older LGBT people going into supported housing or care homes often go back into the closet because these are not inclusive spaces, trying to make sure that we've got inclusive provision. These are little bits on the edges of what is a wider problem of general inequality when it comes to access to services. And this is one of the things that the UN, when it looked at our human rights record in relation to LGBT rights 2025, one of the things that it said was too much discrimination, social discrimination, inequalities of opportunity and access to services. There's still far too much of a problem when it comes to LGBT plus people in the UK, and there shouldn't be. So it is something that's always a question. Trying to make sure there is good information on which groups are going to be affected by more disproportionately by issues is really, really important. So I do a lot of work on surveillance and police surveillance and things like that. I don't
easy to digest stuff. Yeah.
Digital ID. I'm standing up against that. And one of the issues is if you've got digital ID and you haven't reformed the Gender Recognition Act, what that means is you've got people walking the streets who are going to have to out themselves, at a moment's notice when any authority asks. And this is something profoundly repressive. So you have to think about the impacts on different groups in every type of issue. And obviously with my constituency and the way that we think within the Green Party, I'm going to be bringing up those issues in relation to different services lots more.
And Brighton is one of the places in the UK that always, I think for over 100 years, tries to swim against the current. It really made a point early on to, well, at least the police turn a blind eye to certain LGBTQ spaces where people gathered. So Brighton has, I think, a long-standing history of being a sanctuary for our communities.
Quite right, yeah.
Is that still true? And what does it mean for you to be the MP for this place?
I'm not the best person to comment on it, whether things are as good as they were, or whether we're still the best place in the UK. Yeah. I think it's much more for other people to comment on that. But I hope so. And if things are going wrong, I want people to come and tell me about it. I really hope so. And I hope we can continue to do that. And if there's any problems, please tell me.
We are about to enter Pride Month. And this is, I think, at least my official start of summer. And the moment I get my lovely clothes out, I'm all year round autumn, but for Pride Month, I make an effort to actually get some colour thrown on. And pride means different things to different people. What does mean pride to you?
I mean, I'm a political person, so the thing that really fills my heart with joy is the fact that it's about protest, that it is about challenging, but through challenging and complaining about problems, but through expressions of joy, expressions of identity, expressions of pride. That's why it's called Pride. Yeah. And I think that aspect of it, the fact that it's always a protest and needs to stay on the forefront of action, of political debate, and of the most important bits of solidarity, that it should never become. I mean, it's great that it's mainstream to celebrate Pride, but it should never become too mainstream or too worried about how it's seen. That is the point, is that self-expression, that pride, that being at the forefront of culture as well as politics. But I like the protest side of it. Whatever needs protesting about needs to be at Pride every time.
I hear you loud and clear. Who or what in the community inspires you to keep going?
I mean, I've obviously visited a lot of organisations doing fantastic work. I love the work that THT, Terence Higgins Trust, are doing. We want to get transmissions of HIV down to zero. They're doing so much good work.
Is 2030 still on the map?
It's not the target. I went to the reception around this in Parliament, and I spoke about it in front of the Health Secretary, and he stood up and spoke after me and said, we must aim for this. But I think they are not hopeful that they will get there now, which is a real shame. But I think there are places where we can achieve that and point to them and go, everywhere could be like that. And Brighton and Hove could be that place.
Fingers crossed.
I've talked previously about setting targets for like zero road deaths or zero murders. And there are places where there are in a given year zero of those things. Mm-hmm. So we can aspire to do that, and we can point to the fact that we can still succeed at it. So we're aiming for that. But also groups like All Sorts who support young people. And it's so important that this city is a place where you can grow up and be yourself. And of fantastic schools operating so inclusively despite all the pressures. I love when that is happening in the city as well. It makes me very, very proud.
Siân, before I let you go, because I know your schedule is full and
it's a busy time of year.
Loads to do. Last question, if you could leave a message to our readers, listeners, viewers, what message would you give them or leave them heading into Pride Month?
Obviously, have a great Pride Month. Let's make it better than ever, but let's always remember that we are sticking together throughout this, that if they come for one of us, they come for all of us, and everyone is with you, who's in the city working towards this. We will never let you down.
Thank you so much for joining me. That was a shorter episode than usual, but
we can have as many chats like this as you want.
Absolutely, you're always welcome to come back and join me. If you want to listen to another episode with Siân, there is one online already, and it's all about the Green Party and how well they're doing right now. Thank you so much for coming, Siân. Thank you so much for listening and watching this to our readers, and I'll see you soon.